In this demonstration, we'll continue working with our intranet site, but we'll consume and edit data from an external database called MyTrips, and we'll do this via business connectivity services. So here's our database with a simple table called trips, and it has 5 trips that I've recently made. Let's switch back to our intranet site. What we'll do is use SharePoint Designer 2010 to provide a codeless solution for consuming and editing this data. The first thing I'll do is create an external content type. Now we don't have any connections set up yet, so we'll do this from scratch. I'll go ahead and click Add Connection, and I'll choose SQL Server as the data source type. So here's my database server, and my database name is MyTrips. So this will set up the connectivity needed to the actual database. When I click OK, SharePoint Designer will create that connection for us. So it shows us our database called MyTrips, and it shows us the tables in that database. I can very simply right-click Trips, and I could then choose to select individual operations, or I can choose to create all operations in one go. So I'll do just that. We can do this very simply with no coding. We have trip ID, which is an identifier, and we'll say to show that in the picker. We have destination, which is not an identifier, and start and finish and purpose, all of which we'll just select and say show in the picker. So these will be the fields which will be retrieved and shown in our SharePoint UI. And that's all there is to creating the operations for an external content type. So let's save that. It only takes us a few seconds to save the external content type up to the Business Data Connectivity metadata store. Now while I'm here, I can also use SharePoint Designer to create my lists and forms for displaying this data. So a very simple dialog appears, and we'll say that our new external list is going to be called trips, and we have its read operation set to read item, and its system instance is MyTrips. So this operation will create a list and its forms for displaying the data, and that's really all there is to it. So let's go ahead and use that external content type and its list in our intranet site. And look, SharePoint Designer has already deployed the list for us. There we have our data, and it's been extracted from SQL and displayed on the page. When I click Edit Item for an individual item, the details are loaded into a dialog, and I can edit the values here. So let's say that the destination is not Seattle but New York. When I click Save, although this appears from the end user's perspective to be a standard SharePoint list, it's actually an external list, so those data changes are pushed right back to the source, that is to the SQL Server database. And we can see that the items have been updated in the SharePoint UI, but when I switch back to SQL Server and rerun my query for showing you the data, you can see that the actual source data has been updated as well. So without any code, we've had a read-write solution for external data in a SharePoint intranet site.